Namaskar viewers in India and abroad. In the health question series, today is about heart. And all of us are very aware about this, also very concerned about this. So, the biggest parameter or the sensitive part that everyone is facing, we are hearing very unfortunate death of youths, especially gymming. And what is the cause and what can be the potential situation, if not person, just to get little bit understanding and education on this part as well, because all of us know about the ambulance siren and the cardiology, but we don't know the entire history behind it. So let's hear about it from doctor. And today I'm very happy to invite and welcome Dr. S. Venkatesh from Aster Hospital, Bangalore, the senior cardiologist. And he suggested this topic to me because he said there's a lot of information available, at the same time a lot of confusion as well. So let's talk about it. Dr. Suswagatam, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me here.
So as I said, doctor, exercise has a pattern, and it is a combination of many aspects like duration, the mode of exercise, intensity, time of the day, and frequency as well. But there are people who do it with different purposes. So let's first discuss about that. Regular exercise pattern, which is just to keep active and fitness, the intense for any particular purpose, and also the excessive for the sports purpose. So please give little understanding who should do what.
Well, as you said, exercise by itself has three different realms to it. A lot of normal people, that is normal population, those who don't have any disease, they perform exercise with an intention to get health benefits. It's a kind of a preventive strategy for them, and there they are trying to keep fit, and they are trying to prevent blood pressure, diabetes, being overweight, heart disease not coming. So the whole concept of exercise in a healthy population who are looking to reap benefits of exercise is different compared to, let us say, a heart patient, somebody who has had a known heart disease. Maybe somebody has a blockages, or even those who have got other diseases like hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, obesity, heart disease, as I said. So they want to, prevent any complications of these diseases from coming. Or some of these patients have had heart attacks, they've had bypass surgeries, or they have had stent procedures. So because of all these, they have to rehabilitate themselves and safely get into a transition into a state of regular exercise. So exercise for the heart patients, known heart patients, is a different ball game. And lastly, as you said, sport. Now, sport can be two ways. One is recreational. Somebody wants to do an ultra marathon, or somebody wants to play badminton for their own recreation, or somebody is competitive sports, is in competitive sports. It could be elite athletes, or competitive national or international players. So for them, exercise is a different thing. So all of these people have to, obviously they know what they want to do and what is allowed for them, or what they should be safely doing, is what I think the exercise prescription is all about. So exercise prescription depends on what is the person, who is the person, whether it is a normal person, is a patient, or somebody is going into sport, or and also it depends on what kind of intensity and what is the goal of exercise. These things determine the kind of exercise which people can take up safely.
Okay, now post COVID especially, most of the people have started getting into some sort of exercise regime, because somewhere that message is clear. Unless you have all the parameters in check, you are at low risk basically. Now, what has happened is somebody who has not been at all in the regular exercise regime has started taking running for that matter, or brisk walking for that matter. What is your advice for them? Is it strenuous for them?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that if somebody has been completely sedentary and they want to take up exercise, there are a couple of things which will come into play. One is generally relatively younger people, somebody in their teens or 20s,
Mm.
who don't have a serious risk factor, who have not had any symptoms of heart disease in their day-to-day activities, can probably take up exercise without much of a precautions, in the sense that before exercise, do you need to check yourself up and that kind of a thing. On the other hand, people who are older, in the West, they say that anybody going into exercise after 45 years of age has to have some kind of a evaluation by a physician to see if it is safe for them to perform exercise. But then I think we know that South Asians, that
Mm.
is Indians included,
Yes, yes.
we have a higher risk of heart disease compared to Caucasians. And heart disease in our population, also diabetes, etc., starts almost a decade and a half earlier. So perhaps one can safely say above 40 or even about 35, somebody has been completely sedentary, they should get some kind of an evaluation from a physician to see if it is safe for them to exercise.
I see.
But it also depends on one other factor. The factor is that whoever starts the exercise has to start low and build slow.
Mm.
Sometimes what happens is, in our enthusiasm to get the benefits of exercise, we scale up very fast. I have seen people going in for a 10-kilometer run in a event. Like most cities have these marathons and 10-kilometer runs, etc.
Mm.
So people going into those kind of events with very little preparation, few weeks of preparation, or somebody wants to run a marathon in 6 months' time.
Mm.
That kind of scaling up of their intensity of exercise is not a good idea. If we go into the science of doing aerobic exercise, for example, running, we are taking that example, there is so much information available given by professional coaches that for a particular kind of an event, how do you prepare and what are the steps through which you go? And there is a rigorous science behind it. So sports physiotherapists have put these down in paper, on paper. So those kind of steps have to be followed up, and one has to gradually build up. So as long as a young person starts and exercise, in a lower intensity and gradually builds up, that should be fine. And if an older person, maybe 35, 40 years and above, somebody who has never been active in the past in terms of exercise, wants to take up, maybe a basic evaluation with their physician should help them. But again, they should go ahead with a low exercise, which builds up, gradually. For everybody, one important thing is one has to listen to the body. I mean, heart is not the only problem, only organ that can cause problems for when we take up exercise. There are musculoskeletal injuries, what we call as sports injuries, knees and ankles and back. All of these can also have problem. There are methods of preventing them by warming up and stretching and cooling down. All of those things have to be scientifically done. At the same time, any symptom, any abnormal symptom, in the beginning of exercise, some people experience some aches and pains which are normal, but anything else that is unusually felt, we must scale down the exercise, or then we must get it evaluated before we take up more intense exercises.
Okay, on this note, now every corner has a gym, and there are people who are in a fashion of building muscles. The six abs is a new norm, and whether they are able to tolerate it or they are capable of it, irrespective of that, I hear that somebody says, I was in gym for 4 hours, I was in gym for 3 hours. So I want to understand who should do this, and is it really advisable for the normal professional people?
Well, if you go to the gym, you're doing multiple things, in the sense that not everybody who goes to gym builds body. So there are different, types of exercise one can perform in the gym. One of them is, of course, we all know aerobic exercises, something like cycling or running on a treadmill or rowing. These exercises are a cross trainer, elliptical cross trainer, etc. These are aerobic exercises. Then there are some exercises known as resistance training. This basically involves weights, Now, even amongst the people who lift weights, there are two kinds. One is what you mentioned, the serious bodybuilders, and then there is something called as strength training. You get your muscles to be toned up, you get the muscles to be strong, without having to get the six packs, what you are mentioning, or bulky shoulders and pectorals, etc.
Yes.
So that is also possible. I guess all of them can be done as long as we basically adhere to certain rules. One, as I said, one should know that they are fit. Now, if a young patient wants to take up serious gymming, whether it is very intense aerobics or very intense resistant training or serious bodybuilding, there has to be a basic evaluation for them as well. Now, what is known, in sports medicine across the world is that when young patients have certain problems, there are some underlying problems which can give rise to complications with the heart. Now, these can generally be identified by a simple ECG. So, if a young person, maybe somebody in less than 25 years of age, teens and 20s, wants to go into serious gymming, possibly an examination by a physician and an ECG should be able to determine most of the conditions which can give rise to complications of the heart when serious gymming is taken up. On the other hand, older persons, somebody who's above 35, 45, for example, or even older patients, the commonest cause of complications that come from the heart in these patients are blocks in the arteries of the heart, what we call as ischemic heart disease. Now, ECG is rarely enough for them to identify underlying heart disease. For them, more, bigger evaluation, a better evaluation with a physician and some tests like possibly an echocardiogram, possibly a treadmill test or some other stress testing may be indicated based on the physician's evaluation. So these two populations have to be slightly differentiated. But then, yes, if evaluation shows that things are okay, there is no bar for anybody to take up the kind of exercise they want. Now, what we know is, I think I'll tell two things here. One is what we know is that there are certain advantages of exercise. We know that it keeps us fit. It improves our physical tolerance to whatever day-to-day work we do. We know that it helps to keep body weight, or blood cholesterol, or diabetes, or hypertension in check. It prevents heart disease. There is some data that exercise may increase longevity. That is, a person's lifespan can also improve with exercise. There's some data on that. Now, aerobic exercises are known to improve all these parameters by a little extent. But if you add strength training to that, for example, light weights, etc., the two other additional benefits come. For elderly especially, improved muscle strength improves their coordination, and therefore older people who fall down by slipping or losing balance and have fractures, this can be prevented. And also, all the health benefits which I mentioned with aerobic exercises get compounded with when you add resistance training. So there is an additive effect. Bodybuilding has a different connotation. So bodybuilding somebody has studied, uncontrolled studies, large observational studies. They have found that there may be certain reduction in lifespan. There may be a higher mortality for bodybuilders as such. But one cannot dissuade people from taking up bodybuilding based on this kind of metric, because these studies don't understand as to what are the bodybuilders we are looking at. Did they have underlying health problems? Are we studying all the bodybuilders? I'm sure we don't know every bodybuilder who is going through their exercise routines. So how many of them actually were studied? So the denominator is a problem. Also, there may be other things. As I said, what are the health aspects of do they suffer from any disease? What about their other habits? How is their diet? How is their smoking, alcohol? And more often we hear that people who are into serious bodybuilding often use supplements which are unhealthy, anabolic steroids. So this kind of data may be contaminated by all those parameters. So one can't really say bodybuilders have a lower lifespan, but there has been some observation on that. Therefore, I think if somebody is going into that intense exercise, they have to follow more rules than that. So here is the other thing which I want to tell. Exercise by itself is not sufficient to reap the health benefits of lifestyle, and nor is it sufficient to increase one's longevity or decrease one's diseases, etc. Exercise is just a part of the package. We see a lot of youngsters who are now into running, for example.
Yes.
They do running, but they smoke. And on the days of the long runs, they go and have a very high carbohydrate diet.
Yes.
Then they party very hard. There is a lot of
Yes.
alcohol consumption.
Yes.
Now, some patients come and tell me, Doc, I walk 6 kilometers a day. I can't get any heart disease. But on the other hand, there are other problems. Their diet may not be good. Their smoking and alcohol habits may be bad. Stress may be there. They may be getting inadequate sleep. So therefore, when we look at exercise in isolation, it's always a problem. So what we should say is exercise is a part of a healthy lifestyle, but we have to also incorporate other aspects of healthier lifestyle like diet and habits and those other important aspects as well. So therefore, when we look at exercise, we have to not look at it in isolation. So coming back to the gymming issue, as I said, if one is evaluated for serious gymming and they have found that it is, they don't have an underlying risk factor for any kind of complication out of exercise, I think all types of exercise, including aerobic exercise, strength training, or even serious bodybuilding can be taken up. And one has to, again, be very mindful about any symptoms that come up while this thing, and one should not neglect these.
Ignore it.
Last one aspect is there. What is being shown that all the screening which we do, whether it is in competitive athletes or whether in, for example, schools, where children take up a lot of physical activity, the yield, that is the identification of people with underlying disease and therefore prevention of heart disease, heart complications on the field, for instance, is not that great. You have to screen millions of patients to identify millions of people to identify handful of people with underlying disease. On the other hand, what is the most important thing is learning how to do cardiopulmonary resuscitation and easy availability of automatic external defibrillators, the machine which shocks the heart into action if there is a collapse on the field. Those are likely to be much more effective in preventing sudden cardiac death. So if somebody collapses on the field, day before yesterday, I was seeing a video which has been circulated in the social media. A gentleman is playing badminton and suddenly he collapses. And it was so sad that all the other 3 players which were there just hold him by his hand and drag him out of the field. Instead of instituting CPR, that is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, they just wasted the time and the poor gentleman's life was lost. So I think those aspects also have to be looked at when we talk about exercise in the community.
Before that, somebody has shoot a question to me from Munich. The question is, along with this gymming and along with this heavy weightlifting exercise, gym instructors or the so-called trainers also insist on the supplements, what you just briefly mentioned. And his question is, they are essential for my bodybuilding is what is prescribed to me. Is it contradictory or is it something that is dangerous?
Well, see, supplements obviously are of 2 types. One, they are some protein supplements, whey protein, for example. So those probably are essential in the sense that what you cannot get in diet, the adequate amount of protein for bodybuilders, what you cannot get from the diet, you may get from protein supplements. Those possibly are safe because, and also we have to see as to who the manufacturer is. Are these approved by health agencies like drug controllers or FDA, or these people have vetted these products and made sure that no harmful substances exist in them? Such safe supplements or even vitamin supplements some people prescribe. I'm not sure what is the utility of those supplements, but protein supplements definitely they may be safe. I don't think there is any problem in that, and these may help to achieve the bodybuilding goals faster. On the other hand, there is another kind of supplement. These are dubious origin. They come from dubious sources. We do not know what exactly are the ingredients. And they promise that if you take these supplements, your body will be built very faster. You can be Mr. India or whatever those promises are made. And sometimes one hears that. I do not have a first-hand experience on that. One hears that substances like anabolic steroids are added. Sometimes anabolic steroids are prescribed by some of the gym instructors who are not above board. Such kind of things, practices does happen. A person who is getting into these kind of fields has to be very mindful that these kind of supplements which are unhealthy have their own, they will take their toll on the body and they can have complications. So I think we can't generally put supplements in one umbrella and say all of the supplements are bad. I'm sure there are certain logics behind these things. One has to, I think, carefully go through what one is being prescribed. And the gymming instructors push for, obviously they have a commercial interest in pushing certain products. Also, the gymming instructors sometimes push the person for achieving a higher intensity of exercise faster. We'll ask them, even though it has to be a graded exercise, sometimes they ask the gymmer to take shortcuts, achieve heavier weights faster, or some kind of a thing, promising that your body will be built faster within a shorter period of time. I think it is one's responsibility to make sure that one does not break these rules, because not only the heart, that kind of thing can give rise to a lot of sports injuries inside the gym. People can sprain their back or sprain their neck or break some bones. All of these can happen. Ligaments can tear. So therefore, I think these factors, regardless of somebody's enticement, I think one has to scientifically study what is going on and go to stick to some kind of a schedule on
food intake also. Now the very burning issue that everyone is talking about, the examples that we came across, the regular gymming people, the regular exercise people. But again, having said so, you all just not mentioned that the lifestyle also and the other habits also adding to the entire setup. However, earlier the son would take the father to hospital for cardiac related problems. Now sometimes father has to take the son for the cardiac related concerns. What has changed, doctor? We all blame the lifestyle. Yes, definitely. My father would build a house after the retirement. Now I own a house at the age of 30, and that comes with a lot of price. I understand. But at the same time, what has changed so much that anything small is building a stress. Little tension in the office is building a stress. And why are we not able to handle? Because the reason I'm asking is now the lifestyle has changed. Do we have little relaxation in the blood pressure number? Because it's understood that somebody has to, face more pressure. How do we deal with this situation? Why youngsters are facing that much of problem?
Well, I guess there are two questions here. One, you said something about fathers taking children, their children to the hospital, and also you mentioned something about certain episodes which have happened in the social media. We have read about gymmers have untimely death, etc. So that's an important aspect. So what are the common causes which can lead to accidents in the gym or on the competitive sports field? Sportsmen have recently there was a footballer in America who's just recovered and walked out of the hospital. So what are the causes in older adults? Somebody who is about 35, perhaps the commonest cause for heart related sudden death, collapse in the playing arena or in the gym will still be blockages in the heart, what we call as ischemic heart disease. So what happens in this situation is even if there is a small amount of cholesterol deposited in the arteries of the heart,
Mm.
because of the intensity of the exercise,
Okay.
the surface of the cholesterol
Mm.
gets, kind of damaged.
Ruptured.
What
Okay.
usually happens is the cholesterol is inside the artery of the heart,
Yeah. Yeah.
and once the cholesterol is deposited, there
Yes.
is an internal skin that covers the cholesterol.
Right.
Now, that is called as the endothelium. Now, when there is an excessive pressure there, what we call as shear stress, the blood flows so fast that it chops off the top of that membrane, the cholesterol gets exposed to the blood. So,
Okay.
this is called as rupture of the cholesterol plaque. The moment that happens, the cholesterol coming in contact with the
Connect with
blood which is
blood.
flowing in the artery will immediately build a clot inside the artery, and
Oh,
that causes a heart attack at the time.
I
So
see.
many of these patients develop very fast heartbeats, the heart stops, and they have a unfortunate end. Now, this is the commonest cause. There are other causes which are usually seen in a younger individuals. There are certain diseases called as cardiomyopathy. There are some electrical abnormalities of the heart. Some people may be born with heart diseases
Disorder.
like holes in the heart. Some people may have a valve problems inside the heart. So all of these are reasons for patients or people having an unfortunate outcome while they are in intense sport. So, which is where two things come into picture. One is screening. As I said, a younger person, an ECG generally picks up some kind of an abnormality in the teens and in the 20s. So, that should be a good enough test to start with. The older adults should go and get an evaluation as to
More
whether there
detailed.
is any
Yes.
risk factor. And that is where this what to do comes up. So, we know that there are certain risk factors like hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, family history, smoking, excessive alcohol, being sedentary, stress, as you said, lack of sleep. These have all come up now these days. There are certain blood abnormalities which can be there, which are not related to any of these things. So, what happens is when we are getting into an exercise program, we must make sure that none of these risk factors are not addressed. We have to identify if there is an underlying risk factor. If I am a hypertensive, I should know that I am a hypertensive and control it. So, without checking a blood pressure, one should not get into the gym or into the sports arena. Similarly, cholesterol, diabetes, and if somebody continues to smoke, has poor dietary habits, those things have to be changed. Stress is, yes, an important factor these days. However, one, stress does not cause the cholesterol to get deposited in the arteries of the heart. If a person has a cholesterol deposition, has a plaque, stress, physical stress as well as emotional stress or some kind of a psychological stress can cause that shearing effect and cause plaque rupture.
I see.
It's very easy for us to say today that don't take stress.
I know.
Relaxation is very difficult. For us to do that, what we have to do is we have to give up our jobs, resign from our families, and go and sit in Himalaya and do tapasya. So that kind of
The
possibility,
practical approach is
we have
there.
to be practical. So
Yes.
one has to be mindful about how we deal with the stress. I frequently give this example that there is a traffic light stop and it tells us that the traffic light is going to turn, the red is going to turn into green at 60 seconds. So there is a guy who is very impatient and he's
Yeah.
like honking or is kind of
Raising the accelerator. Yes.
absolutely restless.
Yes.
There is another person who is listening to a radio there and relaxing, because both of them know that whatever they do, 60 seconds is going to take its own time and they are going to reach their destination at the same time. So it's stress is a part of our life. Modern life is stressful. We are to deal with stress in the domestic front as well as in the
Professional.
professional front. And when we do this, we have to know how to control our response to stress. That, I suppose, there are a lot of techniques of doing that, and obviously I am not an expert on that, though I keep telling patients to kind of tone down your reaction, don't get angry, don't get emotional when you have this. One can take one of those methods of relaxation, whatever the kind of relaxation is that. Similarly, sleep. Now we see a lot of sleep disorders. People are unable to sleep because of stress. That is one. Second thing is undue work hours, especially in the IT community. We have seen after the pandemic, I must say that many companies have become very shameless. The commute time, which used to be a me time, is gone. So I've seen youngsters working in IT industry opening the laptops as soon as they wake up, and they're closing their laptops only at 11, 12 o'clock in the night, because it's like always on. At home, when they are working from home, there is no work home boundary anymore.
True.
There are many of the professionals are not only doing their house chores, they're looking after the baby, they're walking the dog, they're cleaning up kitchen, they're going getting groceries while the work is going on. So there is absolutely no boundary. And of course, you don't have friends with whom you can have a cup of coffee, hang out. Cooler, water cooler moments are not there anymore. So those, I think, adds to it. And then we have these devices. We take our phones to,
Electronic devices, yes.
and the screen time is excessive.
Yes.
That also causes sleep disorder. And there are some people who genuinely have problems like what is called a sleep apnea. I'm sure that's not in the purview of today, but there are a lot of these issues. So inadequate or low quality sleep is also known to increase many of the problems like hypertension and also certain heart diseases. So I think one has to holistically look at health as a this thing. As I said, don't just think that exercise is the one thing that is panacea for all the other ills which I have in my life. And just because I walk 5 kilometers, one should not think that I'm healthy. One has to, I think, be mindful of all around all of these aspects, and then overall risk reduction has to be there. That is when exercise will become effective, and also that is when exercise will become safe.
Safe, true. Wonderful. Most of these problems, doctor, are invited also. Not always the work demand is such that you should be sticking to the laptop and phone all the time, but it has become an addiction. That has become a life, and that is the heavy price one has to pay. Before we switch on to the related topic in this topic, what is your advice to people who want to maintain the fitness and keep their BP, sugar in check? What level of exercise they should go for? I am sure they need not hit the gym at all.
Yes. So, what is recommended, at least generally, what is recommended is for adequate physical fitness to get the benefits of cardiovascular fitness, cardiorespiratory conditioning, and also, as you said, blood pressure, cholesterol, etc. A minimum recommended time of exercise should be about 30 minutes on most of the days of the week. Maybe 5, better 6, or maybe all days.
All days, yes.
Now, what is known is these have to be moderately intense exercise. If somebody goes for window shopping for half an hour, I'm sure they will not get as much benefit as they would get if there is a higher intensity. Generally, people say that there is something called as age predicted maximum heart rate. That is, at any given age, our heart is capable of beating at a certain rate. It is not easy for them to cross. Like, for example, if somebody is 60 years, 220 minus 60 is what is that? 160?
Yes.
And that is the top heart rate which that person can achieve. Most of them. Very few can cross that. Generally, they'll be a little lower probably. Now, what is advised is that age predicted maximum heart rate, something like 70%, will be a safe limit of good moderate intensity exercise. So you calculate 160 to 70%, and that at that heart rate one can exercise. It is not very easy to keep measuring the pulse or the variables and then stop or start the exercise based on that. But what can one do is walk as briskly as possible. Of course, they have to build up first, and without getting excessively breathless, without getting fatigued, and without getting exhausted at the end of the exercise. So people say that 30 minutes per day is good. On the other hand, we should also, a little more exercise will also help. Then there are people who have, due to their work or the way they structure their day, they can have shorter periods of high intensity exercise. For example, 10 minutes, 3 or 4 sessions somebody does. It has been shown that the health benefits are similar to, let's say, 30 or 40 minutes of one stretch, whatever exercise one does. So one could probably slip. Possibly the day-to-day activity at home, like, many of my patients come and say that I work the whole day in the kitchen and in the in the house. I do all the household chores. That may not be sufficient exercise, but it is better than being completely sedentary. So there are certain gradations. On the other hand, how much exercise should you do beyond which it becomes unsafe for many reasons? So if you look at people like ultramarathoners, there are some studies that say that if you do excessive aerobic exercises also, a particular kind of problem called fibrosis of the heart muscle has been detected, and it has been shown that such patients can have irregular pulse speed, may lead to some kind of a cardiac complication. So there has to be probably an upper limit. I think most coaches, professional coaches, agree that in a month, maybe 100 miles, 160 kilometers of running or walking should be a safe bet, beyond which if you push your body, either as a sports injury or some kind of a complication might develop. I mean, I'm not saying that. See, these are all observational studies. Like they have taken people and studied them with MRI and whatever is there. But it is not some kind of a control study. Like we didn't put 1,000 people on a treadmill and say, okay, come back after a year and we'll see to what happens to the 1,000. That kind of prospective studies have not been done, but these are observational studies, retrospective studies, which say that there has to be an upper limit for aerobic exercises as well.
Now, coming to the core of the problem, let's say, in spite of having so much of caution, somebody collapses. Is it always, by the way, before that, is every pain in the chest is not necessarily heart pain? But, right?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, somebody can be gymming very hard and they could be a musculoskeletal problem as well. But see, it is like this. If someone mistakes a musculoskeletal pain for cardiac pain and goes to the hospital, gets it checked out, rules out a problem, the loss is only a little wastage of time, energy, and money.
Yes,
on the other hand, if we mistake a cardiac pain to musculoskeletal pain and continue to exercise or ignore the pain and not go seek medical advice, the penalty the person pays may be more than what they bargained for. So therefore, I think one has to be careful about that. I do understand that all chest pain is not cardiac pain, but then unless proven otherwise, one should get it checked, because there is no muscle attack with which the patient dies. There is a heart attack with which patient dies. So therefore, I think it is to be, one has to be careful about that particular thing.
Yeah, it's wise to get checked. Now, doctor,
if somebody collapses is what you're asking about.
Yeah, so if somebody collapses is my question. See, though there is a lot of data and process available to know how the CPR is done and how it is done and how long it should be done, but on the spot, invariably there's nobody who knows this, or nobody gets courage that I should do this for so and so person. Other than that, what can be done at least to delay the thing until we get the proper medicine help?
See, when somebody has a problem in the play arena or in the gym, we are talking about one of two things. One is there could be a heart attack. So during that time, one has to reach a hospital. The person who is suffering that heart attack has to be taken to a nearest hospital which has got facilities to treat heart attack. Like ICU has to be there. There has to be a cardiologist who can possibly do a angiogram, angioplasty, or maybe some blood thinner medicines can be administered. There are methods of treating them, but one has to know. So here what happens many times, we start figuring out what to do at that time. Patient has a heart problem. I mean, it happened with one of our very beloved actors in Bangalore here.
Yes.
The person had a heart attack. Yes. When there is such kind of a thing, the first thing to do is straight rush to a hospital which is nearby and get a treatment. Now, if there is any delay, there could be a unwelcome outcome. So, in every play arena, in every gym, at least somebody should know which is the nearby hospital and how to reach there. I think that is one. If there is a heart attack, that is the best one can do. Of course, there is another thing. If there is a heart attack, a tablet of aspirin given as a first aid can prevent many a death. So
Exactly.
therefore, all of these, gyms or play arenas which have a first aid kit should mandatorily have a tablet of aspirin, which is a soluble or a dispersible aspirin,
Correct.
and
Correct.
that can be administered, and the person should be transported to a emergency of a hospital with tertiary care facilities immediately. So that is one thing that can be done. The second kind of a problem that happens in the play arena is a person can have a what is called as a cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest is there is nothing one can do other than a CPR or a defibrillator. Both will be better. That is, therefore, I think as many people in the general public, in the community, should be
Belong.
trained in this. And I think all gym trainers,
Ah.
the staff in the
Mm.
gym,
Mm.
sports officials,
Mm.
coaches,
Coaches, yes.
not just the physiotherapist in
Ah.
in the stadium, but the
Right.
coaches,
Yes.
many of even the players themselves, other gym goers, for example, or
Correct.
fellow footballers,
Yes.
they can all learn how to do CPR. It is not difficult. It's a very simple thing. Now classes are available, mannequins are available, and with this, many people can learn. The more number of people learn how to do CPR, the better it is for the community. Somewhere it will be useful. And the other intervention that is known to help is what is called as the external defibrillator. You might have seen that in the airport and malls these days. These devices, not very expensive, but they are hung in the, on the wall.
Yes.
And there are instructions as to how to use
Operate.
that. So those, again, somebody can get trained and use it. Of course, it's very difficult to make a mandate that every gym should have an AED. I do not know whether it is cost effective, whether it is worthy. So it depends on the how seriously the gym looks at, or how seriously the stadiums look at this kind of complications. But that is an option. But I think the most important thing is that CPR should be learned, and where possible, AED can be deployed so that lives can be saved on this thing. See, these are rare events, but only thing is,
Yes. Yes.
because these are people who are purportedly healthy,
Mm.
they are some of these professional athletes are an inspiration for others, for us to go and exercise, for us to keep fit.
True.
So if any of them has an outcome like this, if there is a
Very
complication
shocking.
involving their heart or something like that, it throws the sport into disrepute. People get scared. Now, how many, after any celebrity or a gym death, what happened? Hospitals were inundated by youngsters coming and saying, I want to get myself checked, which is a good thing. I'm not saying that it's bad. But the thing is, the panic it
Fear.
creates is bad. So therefore, I think to keep sports as sacred and as safe, I think all of us who are involved must make efforts to prevent these kind of episodes on the field, or in the gyms.
Doctor, one very common concern. Has COVID made an impact on heart-related disorders?
Certainly, I mean, we saw it in the right from in India, April 2020 onwards. We saw the first wave, and in the second wave, to an
Yes,
extent, in the third
especially.
wave as well. What we saw was, I'm not talking about the fact that many of the heart patients would not come to hospitals to get checked, would not come to get their medications, would not come even if there is an emergency, thinking that if I go to the hospital, I'll get a. So we, I think, had some unwanted health effects, undesired health effects at that time. Some patients also were lost at home. They wouldn't even come, and some of them, many of the patients were lost like that. I'm not talking about that. What we saw when the first three waves definitely is that there were increased incidence of cardiovascular events, clot formation in the heart causing heart attack, in the brain causing stroke, in the lungs causing what is called as pulmonary embolism, even in the limbs causing gangrene of the limbs. These were very, very common. We also had patients with severe COVID illness having an effect on the heart muscle, the muscle becoming weak, the pumping capacity of the heart muscle becoming less, causing what is called as heart failure. So that also, even when the COVID was mild, when the lungs were not affected so badly with the COVID, there were patients who had severely afflicted hearts. So those also happened. So there were multiple COVID-related impact problems with the heart. So we did see two patterns. One, an increase in cardiovascular events during the peak of those waves, and also awareness. People started, realizing that heart is an important organ. I think in the last 2 years, a tremendous amount of awareness has come in the community
Yes.
about cardiac ailments.
Absolutely.
Maybe because more, deaths happened in
Casualties,
cardiac
yes.
ailments, so people got phobic also. That may be the reason. But there is definitely a higher awareness that COVID can be a problem with many patients.
So, is vaccination another culprit for people to face more heart-related problems,
Well,
independent of the type of a vaccine?
Two things. I do not know the true answer to this question, but I'll tell you what I feel. And that let us, talking about the types of vaccine. If you look at the West, the mRNA vaccine or some other bivalent vaccine, etc., have been shown to have some problems. There has been systematic study, especially in younger individuals, where vaccine-related myocarditis has been. But what is happening here in India is not very clear. But I can tell you one thing. During the first three waves, not so much in the last one, but then during the first three waves, we clearly saw during the peak of COVID pandemic, we saw that a clear increase in cardiovascular complications.
Okay.
Now, I think at some point of time, February of 2021 onwards, vaccines were given to healthcare professionals, and after that, I think it became available to general public in March onwards.
Yeah.
And as reported, more than 200 crore people have received vaccines and boosters, etc. Now, when the COVID pandemic was not at peak, we have not seen that kind of inundation of hospitals with cardiac complications. Now, it would be natural for us to assume now, if there is a extremely adverse impact of this, when there is so much of vaccination being given, we should have had far more number of heart attacks. Now, if we go back to, for example, last month, if you look at last month, compared to December of, say, 2019, the number of heart attacks then and number of heart attacks are probably similar. We have probably made one mistake, that every adverse effect related to the vaccine has not been recorded. It could have been done, I suppose.
Yes.
There was a COVID app. Everybody who says my hair turned gray, or I started developing some aches and pains. Some people said that memory loss is there. Somebody had a heart attack. Somebody had a stomach pain. If every adverse effect were reported on a digital platform which was available, and somebody could have sat and seen 200 crore vaccine post that, what are the common symptoms and what is likely to be associated vaccine, could have been seen. So I think that has not been done. Having said that, as I said again, if you now see any patient coming in with any illness, as somebody's hair turned gray, the question is, did you receive a vaccine? The answer is yes. So we attribute that. So is it that because the prevalence of vaccinees is so high, that any illness, it is very easy to attribute? Somebody, clearly a smoker, had a heart attack. There were blocks in the heart which say that these blocks were there for many years. The first question is, did he receive a vaccine, and is it because of that that person has a heart attack? I think those kind of questions are misleading, and unfortunately, these kind of news tend to spread very fast. So it is very clear, looking at various countries in the world, the way Indian COVID scene today is like, we are able to sit without masks. We are able to live almost a normal life, whereas several countries are continuing to have vaccine mandates. They're having 3 boosters, 4 boosters. So these kind of things are there. I think there must be some protection that the vaccine has given in addition to natural herd immunity. And commensurately, I don't think we see increased cardiovascular complications, at least, if not other things. I don't know if there is really an entity called long COVID, etc. I don't want to get into that debate, but certainly we are not seeing higher amount of cardiovascular complications. So I think,
mm,
at least in our country, what vaccines we have seen, sporadic cases, what is it, because of somebody died because of a heart attack?
mm.
I do not know whether it is vaccine or the
Vaccine.
previous COVID that person had, or other conventional problems that they may have had. But to attribute it that to vaccine and not take, I'm not sure whether that is the this thing. I think it's purely one's perception as to whether one should take vaccine and protect oneself or not. That is there. But to create a fear psychosis saying that vaccines are causing huge amount of health problems may not be, I think, right. And I am sure there will be some population scientists who will go back and look into the mortality statistics. These are very easily available. In India, every death has to be registered. There is a registrar of births and deaths. So if they compare months, whether post vaccine has there been a surge in a particular geography of deaths, can also tell us whether vaccines are creating a problem. But we don't see, and it is not that my personal opinion. I've also spoken to many of my cardiology colleagues across the country to see if they're seeing more cardiovascular complications following the months after vaccination. All of them are saying no. The whatever we saw during the COVID infection itself has not been replicated by the vaccine. So I would say definitely, this is a speculative thing when we say that vaccines are causing a problem. I hope I'm clear on that.
Absolutely. The reason I wanted to you to talk about this because generally the opinion is such that it's a very, since the disease is so intense, the vaccine is also that intense, and it can cause really life-threatening effects. So thank you for educating on that. One last question, doctor. Not all the heart attacks or so-called are painful. They don't come with a knock. So how someone should know he or she is a potential person? Of course, there is a little common sense here, but as a cardiologist, your word of wisdom.
I mean, if you want to know how whether I am a candidate who might get heart attack in the future, I think we have very clear the guidelines. That
Yes.
is, we say that there are certain risk factors. I enumerated some of them, like hypertension, high cholesterol. So a checkup with a doctor who checks all of this should be able to tell us whether we are at a higher risk than general population for a heart attack. But what you are asking is also that every heart attack is not a painful one. So I'm assuming that you are talking about what is called as a silent heart attack. Well, silent heart attacks are technically those heart attacks which happen without the patient being aware. There are, I think, 2 or 3 varieties in our practice what we see. One is patient clearly has a symptom, and they attribute it to gas or some muscular pain or some indigestion. They survive the heart attack. They go on for some time. There is no other symptom after that because they have survived that part of the heart muscle has become dead, and it is not going to cause any symptoms. And then sometime later, years, months, they go to a doctor and the doctor sees the ECG or the echocardiogram and say, you have suffered a heart attack in the past. Some of them we are able to probe. Did you ever have this pain? Yeah, one night I had some severe pain. It was a lot of sweating was there. I thought it is gas. I took some home medicine remedy and slept off. So we can identify. So these are definitely not silent heart attacks.
No.
So then there are some where very mild symptoms are there and these are ignored. The patient knows that this is a problem and they won't go to the hospital either because they're scared or there is no medical access. And this not going to the hospital is phenomenal amongst women.
Yes,
Our women always do this. That if I go to the hospital, my child is not going to go to school, my husband will not. I think there is obviously a mismatch between the cardiac care which the men and women get in every country. It's definitely more pronounced here, and partly I'm not blaming women for that. Our system is also equally prejudiced against care which we give to the women, but many of the women themselves underplay their symptoms. So that could be also one thing. The truly silent heart attacks, that there is no symptom or chest pain. Sometimes there can be giddiness. Sometimes there can be breathlessness.
Sweating,
Sometimes sweating without any pain. Sometimes atypical pain. These can be there, and a person can have uh, painless heart attack. Typically, the textbooks write that these are seen in patients with long-standing diabetes
Okay.
because the nerves around the heart
Ah,
are not as sensitive as in a non-diabetic patient.
mm.
So, in long-standing diabetes,
Okay, okay.
sometimes patients can get heart attack without having pain. Similarly, very elderly people,
Yeah.
people with certain diseases like
It is,
severe
yeah.
kidney disease and all that, they may not experience these pains. So, these are truly silent heart attacks are not that common. There is some generally
Mm.
some kind of a symptom, but
Mm.
there is, yes, there can be a silent heart attack. So, the idea, if that kind of a thing happens, or even if there is pain, how do you prevent a heart attack or how do you identify heart attack is one to look at our own risk factors. What are we at risk? And if it is so, then management of the risk factors and being aware that I can get a heart attack. There are people who say, I can't get a heart attack.
I know.
Let's say every year I've been doing a heart checkup.
Okay.
3 months back, I did a complete body checkup. There was no problem. How did I get a heart attack?
Mm.
Because you continue to smoke or your diabetes was under poor control. So those things are there. Just because our health check reports are fine doesn't mean on that day, the next day one can't have a heart disease. So therefore, being mindful of the risk factors, being
Yeah.
managing those risk factors is one, and any symptoms, however trivial they may appear, however unlikely they may appear to be heart attack. If there is a suspicion, I think one needs to go and get it checked to prevent any further complications.
Super. So I think especially people who are on the BP tablets and who have always the high BP and stress life, they should definitely keep that awareness and visit their cardio testing regularly. That's all I had. Anything else you want to add as a conclusion?
Well, I think, as we see the society today, the lifestyles are getting worse. Sedentariness is increasing,
Yes.
increased amount of refined carbohydrates. We eat too much food, unhealthy food.
Mm.
And the biggest problem in India is, unlike many developed countries or Western countries, where smoking is on the decline,
Mm.
we are now having a huge rise in tobacco consumption, huge rise in alcohol consumption. So these things are going to bother us. In the generations which are indulging in it now when they are young are going to have prematurely all the health, lifestyle related problems. So as an Indian, I'm worried about our society because it is going towards more and more unhealthy lifestyle. So I think exercise is one of them. Of course, I'm sure you will have somebody who will talk about nutrition also.
Yes.
These are very important lifestyle changes one has to do to be aware of our health issues and to make our society generally healthy. Because it is no fun when a 35-year-old person dies in the gym. It's a productive individual,
Yes.
so much contribution
I
for
think.
self, for the family and the society is expected out of them. So it's a loss in all senses for
Yes.
the
Yes.
immediate
True.
family as well as the nation itself.
True.
I think we should look at preventive aspects as a very important thing, and we should try and make our society more healthy.
Definitely. Before I talked to you, 3:30, I was in one supermarket and I was billing my purchase, and I saw prominently the sachets of tobaccos kept there, and on the tobacco sachet, the huge picture of mouth cancer, and it is written it is dangerous. But then I said, why are you displaying in the first front row?
That's
You are
where it
encouraging
sells.
people to purchase.
That's where it sells. If you go to any supermarket today, near the cash counter, you have
Yes,
all the chocolates.
all the chocolates.
And on one side, there will be, as you said,
Yes,
cigarettes.
yes.
See, unless the policies have to change,
Policies, yes.
it,
Government policies.
I mean, we cannot. There is no study which shows that if you stop, educate people, they're going to smoke less. No, it's not going to happen.
No, no.
The taxation on cigarettes should be more. Children should definitely not have access to smoking. It has to be. There is a law called COTPA,
No.
Control of Tobacco Products and all that. So that law is there, but it needs to be enforced more. This thing, so that most of the people who take up tobacco, whether it is cigarette or smokeless tobacco, it happens usually in their teens, in the high school or in the post high
Yes,
school university
yes,
stage. So if
yes, yes.
somebody can make sure that less children smoke, less youngsters smoke, less teenagers smoke, then the society burden of smoke tobacco comes down, and that's. But unfortunately, there are some commercial aspects as well. Therefore, I think this is going to be a problem for the future for us.
Yes. Thank you very much for your time and that word of caution. Hope it will benefit to many.
Thank you very much. I hope that was helpful.
Thank
I
you, sir.
hope
Thank you for
it
your
makes
time.
an impact. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.